So you've now seen all of the information that I've gathered on this topic. Probably not all of it. There's probably a lot more. But of course, gathering these tidbits from all these different authors, researchers, whistleblowers, news articles, testimonies is daunting. It's a daunting task. That's why it's so hard for most people to get their arms around it and see it like this. But this to me seems to be the one thing that they will not disclose, that they don't want to tell you about. And this is, of course, a little bit of speculation on my part. We can only speculate as to what we don't know, right? But this seems to be the one thing that is a part of many of these testimonies, both of abductees and of whistleblowers and of people that have heard things from other friends in Black Ops projects. All across the spectrum, this seems to be the one tidbit that is avoided in all of the official disclosure discussion. When you look at what's been disclosed to senators and congressmen, what's been disclosed to presidents, what's been publicly disclosed to us, we get all these tidbits of different things about UFOs that are essentially meaningless in the global context. All these different tidbits about the aliens, the Greys, the Nordics. It's been eked out over the decades. It's been eked out over years and years and years. And we're still waiting for, what does it all mean? How do you put it together? And we know there are some people that know these things. Again, it feels to me like we have now touched on the one subject that will not be touched by anyone. Of course, there's no benefit to disclosing the end of the world to humanity. There's no benefit to that. There's no monetary benefit. There's no notoriety benefit. Nobody's going to win a Pulitzer for telling the world that it's going to end. So you can imagine why that would be the most well-guarded secret of all. The other thing is, if you tell all of humanity that the world is going to end, what is that going to do to humanity? What would life be like in the world if everyone in the world knew that they only had a couple years left? Well, evil people would get all the more evil. It would be chaos. And that's probably why they won't disclose this. And of course, maybe I'm being reckless by sharing this information with you. Maybe I am. But I also don't believe that it's right to hide things from people, to keep secrets that are intrinsic to human nature. They have such explanatory power about our existence and our meaning and our destinies. It confirms so much of what I've seen in scriptural context of prophecy about the end of the world, about the coming of Messiah, about the way God's going to deal with humanity in the end. It all fits together and it all makes sense. But for people who don't believe in those prophecies, for people who don't believe in the God behind them, this is just another day at the office. It's all about what's in it for me. And so for them, there's no benefit to a full disclosure. That's why I don't think that this, no matter who's in control of our governments, no matter who's in control of the information, I don't believe they're going to reveal this information as part of disclosure ever. There's simply no vested interest in the elite or the people that have the knowledge of doing so. But I hope for you, in seeing this and understanding some of these things, this doesn't destroy your hope, but instead builds it. Because so many things make sense when you understand what's going to happen. So many things fall into place. At least they do for me. I would hope that that happens for you. And I just think it's right to go into the future knowing as much as we can about what is going to happen and about what our responsibility is in that. A responsibility to make ourselves ready for that occasion. a responsibility to help others get ready for that occasion. Myself, as a Christian, I feel a lot of responsibility in helping people understand who God is, what is going to happen, and what they need to do about it. And so from my perspective, my whole goal with this is to help you understand the severity of what is coming, the severity of dealing with God at the end of the history of this world. A time when all of humanity needs to reconcile themselves either to that God or go a different direction. And according to everything I know about that, you don't want to go the other direction. You want to head towards the God who's in control of these things. So I encourage you, figure these things out. This is the time. There isn't much time left. May God bless you in your search. And trust me, I would understand if you just do not believe this at all, and you feel like this is nonsense and it doesn't mean anything, and that all the signs and testimonies and things we've looked at are nonsense. If that's your perspective, then that's your perspective. All I can do is do my best from what I understand and make the necessary changes in my life that I feel it requires to deal with what's coming next. May God bless you in your search for the truth of what's coming next. Hi, I hope you've enjoyed the Real Disclosure series. Thank you so much for your time invested. I know it takes a lot of time to watch these things. I hope that it was well worth your time. I hope that you got a lot out of it, that you found out things you didn't know before, that you saw new things you want to explore. That's the whole purpose of all of this. You know, there's just a few things after I got done with something that big and something that extensive that, of course my mind starts running after the fact and I want to say so many different things. Even though I think I tied the series together really well, there's just a few more personal thoughts I wanted to add as an addendum to the series. And one thing that I wanted to make clear from the points that were made in the video, I truly believe that the alien entities that are talked about in all of UFO disclosure are spiritual beings. Whether you're talking about like the Greys or the Nordics or the reptilians, all of these I believe are spiritual manifestations of different angelic type beings. The breadth of the cosmos that God created and the beings that he created within it is enormous. And so there's no reason we shouldn't think that there's all these different types of beings that can and do interact with us. In fact, as the video showed, we have all of history to look back at and see that, yes, these entities have intervened in human history from time to time. And the sightings that we now have are just the same as they've always been. They seem to come in and out of reality. They can appear, they can disappear, they can change shape and move through solid objects. All of these things are the properties of spiritual entities. They talk with humans in telepathic ways instead of actually speaking. They can be summoned or prayed to or spoken to in a trance. So there's all of these things that, again, every time we look at these entities, they point towards the same spiritual entities that have been interacting with humans for all of history. But we do have to ask ourselves, why is it getting so intense right now? Why are there more instances of this than possibly in the past? And I believe that's also for the same reason that all the other evidence I showed in this video is that we are coming close to something big that's going to happen. And so that's why they are intervening more than ever before. Because just as humanity gets frightened when big things are about to happen, spiritual beings get frightened when something big is about to happen. And from what we understand through scripture and testimony of individuals, these entities know a lot more about what's coming than possibly we do. especially since most of humanity has ignored the signs and the prophecies that have been given to us for millennia. But I really do think that this all points to a fact, and that is that this event, this cataclysm, is on the horizon for humanity. And I don't say that to scare anyone or frighten anyone. You know, for me personally, there's nothing scary about that. If that was God's plan and it happened tomorrow, I would be perfectly okay with that. But that's the relationship I have with God, and I'm very secure in that. You know, not everybody is. So I think that's for each individual person to ask themselves. You know, first, if you even believe any of this, if you think any of this is possible, then fine. If you don't, then walk the other way and don't give it another thought. But I think I'm sitting here trying to reach out to you, and I think that the evidence has tried over the centuries to reach out to all of us. And it's just that we don't seem to open our eyes to it. We don't seem to take it at face value and recognize it for what it is. And then if you do accept kind of what I'm saying, you see the evidence, you understand that yes, it does all seem to be pointing a certain direction, then it's up to each individual who understands that to deal with it in their own way. You know, I believe the best way to do that is, of course, to reconcile yourself to God, to get ready. And then just in the way that Jesus Christ, God's Son, taught us to, we should reach out to other people and try to show them the way. Because as I understand it, what matters in the end is if you have accepted who God is and who his Son is, and then moved towards him in faith. But it's up to each individual to do that for themselves. It's not up to anyone else except you. And again, if we think back over the evidence, it does seem to be that all of it is pointing towards this same thing. For instance, Dr. David Jacobs, when he was saying that the aliens were telling the abductees, quote, "Soon we will all be together." And that David Jacobs' assessment of all of this was that the aliens were carrying out a hybrid breeding program with humanity in order to preserve humanity in some regard, to preserve it until after this cataclysm. See, those are the types of nuggets of information that if you think about it, and you have to understand Dr. David Jacobs doesn't know everything. He's only reporting what he's hearing from these abductees. And of course, that's kind of second or third hand information. But what we can glean from that is that possibly these spiritual beings are doing something strange with humanity in an effort to save themselves, so to speak. You have to imagine there are unclean spirits and fallen spirits that are in just as bad a shape as anyone in humanity who is wicked at the end times, at the sound of the trumpet, at the great white throne judgment. So these spirits are just as scared as anyone about what is coming up. And so, yes, the abduction phenomena seems to be related to that in some ways. This weird obsession that the entities have seemed to have with humanity's reproductive systems for a long time, and them telling people that something's coming, showing them disasters, showing them information, it all points the same direction. There's really no getting around it. How many different testimonies have I heard that someone said the aliens said there was a coming disaster, or that they knew there was a coming disaster because they had visions, etc., etc.? How many? A lot. A lot. Too many to count. And I'll just say that I knew the first time I saw that whistleblower who took the pseudonym Victor, the moment I saw that second interview in 2007, I knew it was true. I knew this man was telling the truth. Now, do I think Victor's character is impeccable? No. He seems like a sullen man who was stuck in these agencies for a long time. He had a very pessimistic view of reality. But based on the information he had and found out from other people, he was able to give a whistleblower testimony that did expose some truth. I do believe that the alien interview footage that he presented was true footage from the government's interactions with an alien quote-unquote entity. And I believe it's one of the only legitimate pieces of footage of that in existence. And what did he do? He warned us of this exact thing. Word for word, verbatim, he said the elites, these upper-level politicians, are preparing for a cataclysm, for a disaster, trying to figure out how they can get off the planet. And the elite are preparing too. You see the underground bunkers they're building, all these different things. They won't tell you why they're doing it, but when you put all the pieces together, you see why they're doing it. They will never disclose this piece of information. They won't do it because it reduces their chances of saving themselves. It's all about selfishness in this game. So don't listen to what they say, but watch what they do. And what they do tells us a story. Now, I've been asked many times about Bluebeam, Project Bluebeam, which is this government project that was all about creating holographic illusions in the sky and being able to deceive people with that type of technology. I've been asked, when are they going to use it? What are they going to do with it? And my only answer to that is that here's the scenario I feel is going to play out in our near future. I believe that the powers that be will openly disclose aliens. Now, whether they call those aliens interplanetary beings or interdimensional beings, it really won't matter. But what they're going to do is when they come on the scene and they are presented to the world, they're going to be presented to the world as helpers, saviors, if you will. So what we're going to be asked to do as a civilization is partner with the aliens, these spiritual entities, which I believe are demonic. And we're going to be told that if we don't partner with them, there's a disaster coming that we will not be able to save ourselves from. And so in that way, this blend of truth and lies is going to cause a large portion of the world to do exactly that out of fear and because of the control that people have over the citizens of the world. So they're going to be seen as our saviors. They're going to be touted as such. And many governments in the world are going to strong arm their citizenry into allying themselves with these beings. And it will be said that that's to protect humanity. We will be told we need to trust them because they are advanced and they know better than us and they have higher technology than us. And there's the magic sauce. There's the sweet spot. Because then there's a switcheroo. And the switcheroo is that the aliens that you will be partnering with are actually the ones that want to stand in the way of what God has planned for the earth. They are the ones that are afraid of what's coming. They are the ones that have been behind the abductions of thousands, countless numbers of humans all across the world over the past decades. They're the ones that want to stand in the way of God's plans. And so what they will do is try to force humanity to partner with them against God with the most powerful ally they can muster. And that would be Satan. That's the trick. And that's what's going to happen, the great deception that might be coming our way. So that's part of why I'm doing these videos. Again, it's not to scare anyone. It's to help people. It's to help us think about what might be coming and how we might deal with the situation when it arrives. It will seem so deceptive. It will be so easy to fall in line with what's going to come. So be prepared and be ready. Know where your heart is and know where you stand with God before all of this starts. Now, another thing I want to talk about briefly is that a lot of the whistleblowers that have come out of the military intelligence community from a lot of different aspects of it will talk about multiple timelines. Okay, so they'll say things like, The intelligence groups had used Project Looking Glass, and they had found that there might be multiple timelines that could be our future, and that they think there's one way we can go towards the cataclysm of the earth and another way we could go where we would avoid it. This actually was part of Dan Burish's testimony, and it's been part of some of these more recent people's testimonies. But here's what I actually think that comes from. I don't think that there's actually multiple timelines at play. That actually would cause a philosophical problem because of who God is. If God has a plan, then that plan will come to pass. It doesn't matter who says anything different or what they saw in any machine called Project Looking Glass or anything else, any yellow book or yellow cube or any device that was angelic technology. So what I think has happened is that these intelligence groups did get together, and they have used these types of devices like Project Looking Glass. And they have seen multiple different scenarios in the future. Although if you step back and you listen to how they explain how the device works, it's not a perfect science in the terms of you don't get to roll a dial and say, show me what exactly happens in, say, 2028. And then it shows you a perfect picture. That's not how the device works. It's a little more ambiguous. It shows you kind of collages of images and different visions of the future, so to speak, as you roll forward. Now, the intelligence communities saw these different visions that they were presented with as multiple timelines. That was their way of explaining it. And this is, of course, while they're seeing pictures of cataclysm and also pictures of great prosperity and people living in harmony. So they're seeing all these different images, and it doesn't make sense to them. They're seeing the same things at almost the same time frame and getting confused because, again, these projects are not a pure science. They're angelic technology. They're doing their best to reverse engineer them from how they built them off of cylinder scrolls. It's not an exact science. So what I believe happened was they saw destruction and cataclysm of earth in some images. And they also saw wars happening. They also saw spiritual beings and different things like this. They saw also a golden age of humanity, if you will. And they also saw most likely a period when people were living on the earth, but it was a beautiful earth, almost like a new earth. They saw humans and spiritual beings living together, and they saw human advancement, what they might call human evolution, taking place, some kind of ascension. Now, if you put all those pictures together, you realize that that matches up with prophecies, with the prophecies of the remaking of the earth, the cataclysms that would come, the wars that would come, but then God remaking the earth and humanity, righteous humanity, the children of God, living on that new earth in peace and in harmony with Jesus Christ and God his Father. So not understanding that, you can see how these intelligence groups might have thought these were multiple timelines, multiple outcomes. In one outcome, maybe there was wars and cataclysms and famine. But in the other outcome, they thought a separate timeline was human advancement and ascension. So I believe they merged those two ideas into a multiple timeline theory because of the prevalence of quantum theory that prescribes multi-universes. Now we could go into a whole nother discussion as to whether quantum physics is legitimate or not, and whether its predictions of multiple dimensions or the multiverse, so to speak, has any merit whatsoever. That's not really the topic that I care to discuss right now. But just know that I think their premise on what they saw was incorrect, and they perceived multiple timelines when there was no multiple timelines. It was simply visions of the coming cataclysm of earth and remaking of earth and all the things that have been prophesied from the scriptures for centuries. So what they really saw was even more amazing than they could have even imagined. But of course, we're not talking about people that looked at this stuff through a biblical lens. But if they had, they would have seen it. The Bible and numerous writings throughout history, and I mean the millennia of history, have talked about the end of the earth, a period of turmoil, a period of cataclysm on the earth, a time when fire would fall upon the earth, the judgment of mankind would happen, and then the earth would be remade by God himself, ending with the coexistence of man and spirit and God living together in harmony on the earth after it's remade. So it seems these intelligence groups weren't quite as intelligent as they thought they were. They looked right past the truth because they didn't have eyes to see it. And I'll just put on the table that I definitely believe, like some of these whistleblowers talked about, that this is going to happen within my lifetime. And again, I don't have a problem with that. If that's what God has planned, then so be it. And the funny thing is, if we go back to some of the stuff we looked at with Scientology, that L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, agrees with me, agrees with this viewpoint. As you heard from the material that we went over, he had proclaimed himself as Lucifer, and that he had a stated goal of stopping the Lord Jesus Christ from coming, and that he knew this was going to occur. It was his goal in life to stop it from happening, and to stop the destruction of the earth that was to follow. And it's funny that that whole reversal idea, the idea that these cultists could somehow reverse God's plan, that's been actually disclosed in many different movies and different ways over the years. I've seen a lot of different places. The idea of them trying to reverse God's plans. And we don't have time to go into all of that now, but if I had to make a guess, I would say that L. Ron Hubbard's religion, his made-up religion of Scientology, was just a smokescreen for a cultic recruitment program to find people that had the psychic or spiritual sensibilities to help in his quest to defeat Jesus Christ in the last days of earth. Perhaps that's what Scientology is all about. It's not about any kind of religion. He knew and kind of said things that hinted that he knew it was a game. But it was one in which he could produce people that had a spiritual sensibility that they could do the black magic that he was interested in doing to, again, try to stop or reverse God's plans for the earth. Scientology seems to put a Christianized veneer over a training program that brings out blind obedience and psychosexual black magic in its members. It was obviously rooted, the whole religion was rooted in L. Ron Hubbard's connections to Jack Parsons and Aleister Crowley and all of the experimentation they did with the black magic sex rituals in the Nevada desert. And one of the strangest things is that the entire government, the dark side of our government, has been involved in that same type of practice this whole time for the last half century or more. And the scarier part is that now whistleblowers and even the general public is starting to get involved in this type of black magic where you summon entities and you interact with entities without any protection whatsoever, without any spiritual protection or care whatsoever. These people go blindly into a situation over which they have zero control, with entities they don't know the first thing about other than they appear when I ask them to. It's quite scary, especially if we now start to have people all over the world starting to do and practice this very thing. And if Hubbard was saying years ago that the demonic forces were and are trying to stop Christ's coming, then why wouldn't we believe that the contacts that people are having with aliens now, or these spiritual entities, isn't the exact same thing? The same entities trying to stop the plans of the Lord Jesus Christ and his Father in heaven. It's all rooted in these spirits' desire to somehow avoid this catastrophe, because it's not just a catastrophe of earth, it's a catastrophe of heaven. According to the prophecies, At the same time that all humanity is judged, all of heaven will also be judged. So it's bigger than just earth. So the conclusion of all this is that, of course, disclosure is going to be rerouted. It'll be driven towards this thing that I've been telling you, that aliens are here. No matter where they're from, planets or dimensions, they are here to help you. And you're going to need to partner with them to avoid this coming disaster. And you're going to need to fight against the one who is bringing the disaster. Who is that? That's God. They want you to work against God and against Christ with the demons to stop the King of Kings, Jesus Christ. This is the ditch they're going to drive disclosure into. It's going to result in the damnation of millions upon millions of people who are blind to the reality of God and his Son, Jesus Christ. Every person that goes along with this demonic plan is in big trouble in the end. And that's why we Christians have to reach out. That's part of why I did this video series, so people would wake up and see it. We've got to realize as humans, as Christians, as just brothers and sisters on earth, that this is the biggest war perhaps in all of human history. But it's not a kinetic, not a physical war. This is a spiritual war. And I hope you have the will to fight with me. God bless.